Well, the former Deputy Premier of Victoria, John Thwaites, won the hearts of the gay and lesbian community, at least in part because of his willingness to be photographed in public in his Speedos. But it's fair to say this tactic isn't working for my next guest, with most of the gay and lesbian community being very wary of a possible future Prime Minister who trained to be a Catholic priest and who recently said he feels threatened by homosexuality. Many in the community reacted with shock, feeling that he was more of a threat to us than we are to him. The Leader of the Opposition, Tony Abbott, joins us on the line now. Good morning, Mr. Abbott.
G'day, Doug. How are you?
I'm really well. Now, a lot of people have called in to me saying, what did Mr. Abbott mean when he said he felt threatened by us?
Well, Doug, look, it was obviously a very poor choice of words.
You can say that again.
Yeah, look, I think blokes of my generation and upbringing do sometimes find these things a bit confronting. Anything that's different can be a bit challenging, but the truth is that as we get older, we mellow, we appreciate that homosexuality is a fact of life, but unfortunately in the rough and tumble of a pretty willing television interview, you sometimes come out with things that if you were considering your words more carefully, you wouldn't say.
Well, one of the things that's been brought up again and again by listeners, I'll quote one here from one listener who'd like to know if you're feeling threatened by any other subcultures. Would you have felt free to say the same kind of thing, for example, about Muslims or Jews or blacks or whatever?
Don't forget, Doug, that I'm a 52-year-old bloke from a fairly traditional background. I imbibed Orthodox Catholic teaching.
I think treatment's a good word, Tony.
In my youth. And it takes time to, I suppose, come to a more balanced understanding of these things. But look, without wanting to pretend that I am perfect or that I will never again be guilty of sensitivity crimes, I do think, Doug, that I am pretty good at taking people as I find them.
You see, the problem with using the word threatened is, you're quite right, a lot of men of your generation do express a feeling of threat in the presence of homosexuality. The trouble is they tend to act on that feeling of threat with violence. And in a sense, what you said could be seen as legitimising that reaction.
Look, absolutely not. However surprised or even dismayed we might be, it is an absolute obligation on all of us to treat people with fairness, with decency. The point that I make is that I do have a number of people who are very close to me who are gay.
Tony. This is the old, some of my best friends are gay defence, isn't it?
And it sounds like a terrible cliche, but don't hang me, please, Doug, for an ill-chosen word.
I'm just offering you some rope, Tony.
And don't hang me, please, for the fact that I am quite a conservative bloke. I do have a traditional background, but it doesn't mean that I'm incapable of appreciating the complexity of modern life.
Well, we do have a problem in the gay community in that we have extremely high rates of suicide and self-harm among our young people because of the expressed homophobia from the general community, particularly in regional rural areas. So I think you'll understand why people reacted the way they did to your remarks. And I accept, as you say, that you made a poor choice of words, but have you spent very much time, visiting gay organisations, getting to know the gay community as it is nowadays on the ground?
I think it would be fair to say that I haven't, but certainly in the last couple of weeks I've had quite a lengthy chat to Corey Earlham, who is one of the leading spokesmen for the gay community, and I certainly would intend to maintain a dialogue, and I would want to take all these concerns seriously and wherever possible address them.
The other thing that makes people perhaps in our community a little bit nervous of you is your religion, your close association in particular with Cardinal Pell, and the kind of things that come out of people like Cardinal Pell and Pope Benedict about the gay and lesbian community. You make no secret of the fact that you take counsel from Cardinal Pell in the course of your everyday life.
Yeah, could I make 2 points? The first is that George Pell is a vastly more compassionate man than the stereotype. He is a very pastoral priest, and I can personally say that I have taken issues to him in my own life and had a very compassionate and considered response. Now, sure, as the Archbishop, he's got to reiterate the Catholic teaching. The other point, Doug, I should make is that, of course, the traditional teaching of the Church is often expressed in ways which people find alienating, and I don't like that any more than you do. I think, though, if you read the Gospels as opposed to necessarily read papal encyclicals, you'll find a religion and a Jesus who wants us to have life and have it under the full. And unfortunately, this sometimes gets translated into dry legalisms, and that's a real pity. But I don't think that the church is out there to judge and condemn, or it shouldn't be out there to judge and condemn. It should be out there to help and to liberate, and that, I think, is the proper conception of Christianity.
I think you're probably right. As you say, again, we're making another division here between what Christianity is and what the church is, and I would have very strong doubts as to whether one could really call the Catholic Church particularly Christian in some of its behaviour, but we won't go down that line, because I want to come on now to questions of policy and questions of what you would and wouldn't support in terms of policy to get rid of the remaining discrimination against the gay and lesbian community. Now, there is a big push on within our community for a federal anti-discrimination law. Where would you stand on that one?
Well, we did in 2008 support the legislation removing discrimination against same-sex couples in federal laws. I mean, we supported that, and the Liberal Party is against all forms of discrimination. That's our general principle. Now,
well, when you were Federal Health Minister, you didn't include same-sex couples in the Medicare safety net. That was discriminatory.
Well, we didn't change that aspect of the law. It wasn't new law by us. So while you could say with justice, Doug, that that particular law was not changed by us, it wasn't introduced by us. And if we had been introducing a law in my time, it wouldn't have been in those terms.
Okay, well, we'll let you get away with that one for now. Can I make you one suggestion to you and see how this one flies? There was recently a press release from the LGBTI National Health Alliance pointing out that all sorts of groups within Australian society, whether it's people with a disability, regional and rural people, young people, seniors, women, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people, they have a minister in the government, they have an advisory group, they have a departmental unit, there is a national strategy. There is none of that for the lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender community. Would you be up for having an LGBTI minister in your cabinet? Again,
Doug, being a Conservative, I'm more in favour of getting the practice right than in creating more process and more bureaucracy. Now, my door would certainly be open to everyone with a reasonable case to make, and I think that is a better way to handle things by and large than establishing a whole lot of formalised structures which can easily just become talk fests. I suppose I would want to be told what the problems are, how they are best fixed, and to try to address that, and then henceforth have an open door to people who are keeping tabs on the situation.
Well, one way you could start would be by supporting a federal anti-discrimination law. Would you do that?
Well, as I said, if the law is there, I would be very happy to look at it. The Coalition has supported the introduction of legislation to extend protection against discrimination on the basis of gender identity. I mean, my understanding is that we have supported that. I'm not aware that there is any particular bit of legislation before the Parliament at this time.
But if there was, would you continue with what seems to be your approach to your job as Leader of the Opposition, of opposing everything the government does, or would you take a bipartisan approach and come on board with it?
I've always said, Doug, that we'll support good law, we'll oppose bad law, but we'll scrutinise all law. So I guess we'd want to scrutinise it. We'd want to be careful that it didn't have unintended consequences. We'd want to be sure that it would work out for the best, because so many well-intentioned laws can have obnoxious consequences. And having done all of that, I'd see no reason why we couldn't support it, but we would need to see it and we would need to subject it to the kind of quality control that good opposition should always apply.
But in principle, if it was a good anti-discrimination act on the grounds of sexual orientation, gender diversity, etc., you would support it?
In principle, I would support it.
Okay, well, we've run over time on this, but I think it was worth doing. As I say, thank you very much for your time this morning, and look forward to meeting you sometime in the future.
Okay,